diversity with the meteoric rise of the New World. In wine speak, the New World is a somewhat lazy but convenient way of throwing together the entire American continent, Australia, New Zealand and South Africa, in contrast to the Old World, which refers to Europe, other Mediterranean countries, and the former Soviet Union. From both, new wine-producing regions appear on the map like mushrooms overnight. There are smashing wines from all over the place, but it can be bewildering to the uninitiated. When you walk into a wine shop or contemplate a restaurant list, how do you choose which bottle to buy? The field of wine knowledge is vast, especially nowadays. Some of it is practical, useful to know when you're buying and serving the stuff. Some is background, concerning the processes involved in making it in vineyard and winery. It's fun to know, if that's what turns you on, and it may well enhance your enjoyment of the drink. What follows is a mixture of the two. It can only amount to an appetizer, a light sprinkling of wine knowledge. For the serious student aiming at a career in wine, there are excellent courses available in many countries. Annual cycle. The job of a winemaker is governed by the annual cycle of the seasons. As with any farmer, certain things must be done at certain times of the year. The climax of the winemaker's year is the harvesting, pressing, and fermentation of fresh, ripe grapes. Everything that goes on in the preceding 11 months is geared towards these events. Exactly what happens when will vary according to climate, grape variety, and style of wine to be produced. But here is a rough guide to the key stages, starting in the dead months of winter. The vines are pruned while they're dormant. Pruning is back-breaking but vital work. It's a skilled manual job involving carefully judged snips with a pair of secateurs. It will influence the eventual yield of each vine, which can vary between 1 to 10 tons per acre, by causing it to produce a given number of bunches. It will also determine its eventual shape, which in turn is related to how it will be trained. The life of a vine grower is never less glamorous than now. You're cold and miserable, with freezing fingers and boots heavy with mud, and there are thousands and thousands of vines lined up waiting to be pruned. It's hard to imagine the transformation that will later take place in your vineyard, as a bleak landscape dotted with gnarled black stumps turns in late summer to a profusion of luxuriant growth. Remember to take a bundle of vine cuttings home with you. You can use them on the barbecue once they've dried, and treat yourself to a delicious grilled steak for your dinner. Other outdoor tasks include checking the condition of your trellising and making necessary repairs. If the winter weather becomes too ferocious, you can take a break and retreat to the winery. Here also there is plenty to do. The condition of last year's wine will need to be monitored carefully. Barrels must be checked and topped up once a fortnight to compensate for any ullage. This is the inevitable gradual loss of wine by seepage through the wood. If not remedied, it will let in air and spoil the wine. The wine will soon be ready for racking, that is, transferring it to a fresh container and leaving dead yeast and other deposits behind. Machinery should be cleaned and checked for necessary repairs, and the previous year's wine will be ready for bottling. Make sure it's properly blended, clear and stable. The arrival of spring is marked by bud break. New growth appears in the form of tiny green shoots, the first sign of the vine's reawakening after its winter sleep. Assuming the ground is not too wet, you plough between the rows of vines, destroying the weeds and aerating the surrounding soil. Frost danger is at its height. A hard frost, especially at this time of year, can be catastrophic and devastate your crop. Vines' young shoots are at their most vulnerable and must be protected. So what do? You may light heaters in the vineyard. You may use a wind machine, which will mix cold air below with warmer air above. Or you may employ a sprinkler to coat the young vines with water. This, paradoxically, protects the vines, since water turning to ice remains at 0 degrees centigrade, but the vines do not suffer serious damage until they reach 1 degree below. Whichever way you choose, it's advisable to install a temperature-operated alarm system to give you warning. The vines will be putting out suckers, new growth from underground, which should be removed in order to concentrate their energies into the young shoots. Weeds will also be enjoying the arrival of spring and must be kept in check. The young shoots will later need training onto wires. This is also the time to spray the vines against diseases such as mildew and oidium. In early summer comes the next major milestone, namely the flowering, the first emergence of blossoms which will later turn into tiny grapes. Great importance is attached to the quality of the flowering, which influences the size of the crop. The weather now is critical. Cold weather can bring about coulure, leaving the flowers unfertilized. Pray for a good flowering. New young vines should now be planted, year-old cuttings from the nursery, which will come to yield fruit in 4 years' time. At first, they'll need protection with rabbit guards. Meanwhile, in the winery, barrels need topping up, and will soon be ready for a second racking. This is necessary 3 or 4 times during a fine wine's first year in barrel. And don't neglect the paperwork. See to the sales of last year's wine. It should be dispatched before the arrival of high summer. Before and after flowering, the vine shoots must be thinned, and the chosen ones tucked between wires to produce a healthy canopy of leaves. After flowering comes the set, when the blossoms turn into minute, hard green grapes. It's vital to guard against the plague of fungal diseases, which growers combat with sulfur or copper-based sprays. A small grower will do this from a knapsack sprayer. A huge commercial producer might use a helicopter. The ground will again need weeding, and, depending on the size of the crop, you may now decide on bunch thinning. If the weather has been kind and the crop is abundant, the vines can become overloaded with grapes. You may need to focus the sunshine and the vine's available nutrients on fewer bunches in order to make more concentrated wine. The veraison approaches, when the grapes begin to soften, mature, and change colour. You should trim side shoots and shoot tips to allow fresh air and sunshine access to the developing bunches of grapes and encourage berry ripening rather than shoot growth. In the winery, this may well be the time to bottle fine wines from a previous vintage. You inspect and clean the vats, casks, and other equipment which will be used for the vintage which is soon to arrive. Make sure you have supplies of possible additives such as yeast, sugar, and yeast nutrients in stock. Harvest time is approaching as summer turns to autumn. This is the busiest time of year, and you'll be glad there are 25 hours in the day. You must consider the crucial question of exactly when to begin the harvest. The grapes are reaching maturity. Their flavours develop, and their sugar and acid content seesaw, the sugar rapidly increasing as the acid declines. Harvesting, when the grapes have the right flavours, is of the utmost importance. You must arrange for a team of pickers to be on hand, and they must be fed and housed. Neighbourhood birds have decided that your succulent crop has been grown especially for their benefit, and you may need to rig up bird scarers, unless you've had the foresight to cover your vines with netting. The weather is again crucial as the harvest approaches. Rain can dilute or rot the grapes, and a summer hailstorm can devastate them. Back in the winery, you fill the fermentation vats with water to swell the wood, and finish cleaning the winery in time for the harvest. The grape pickers arrive, a motley crew of students, retired bank clerks, housewives, refugees from foreign land, and out-of-work actors. All manner of oddballs, in fact, with sunburn and vast appetites. If you're ever tempted to join them, my best advice is to take knee pads. Depending on the height of the vines, it's more or less back-breaking work, and you'll be alternately crouching, squatting, and kneeling, in constant search of a comfortable position. Protect your knees with pads, darlings, as worn by classical actors under their tights, in order to collapse painlessly during their death agonies. It's a merry, colourful time, with communal meals at long tables and generous quantities of rough new wine, hard work, songs, love affairs, and quarrels. Traditionally, the harvest culminates in a glorious knees-up, with a blaring horn announcing the arrival of the final truckload of grapes, toasts being drunk, general rip-snorting leglessness, and the throwing of an unsuspecting picker or two into the mass of grapes. On the other hand, you may be working on a scale, or in a style, which involves harvesting your grapes mechanically. Either way, they'll be carried straight to the winery and pressed and fermented. At the completion of the harvest, you can enjoy a brief calm after the storm, but there's still work to be done. The exhausted grape skins, pips, and stalks, known as the cake, may be used to distill a potent eau-de-vie, or grape spirit, or they may be taken back out to the vineyard and spread as compost. Fine wines, now in their second year, are ready for fining and clarification. The new wine will move from fermentation vat to barrel or other container. In the vineyard, you take cuttings to propagate new young vines, and soil is ploughed up round the vines to give protection from winter cold. Cover crops may be planted. The leaves turn yellow and fall off, and the vine becomes dormant again. And before you know it, it's time to resume pruning.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.